Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for May 1st through 7th. This week I read one book, I watched 4 shows, I watched 4 movies, and I listened to one book. First this week I read Queerly Beloved. This just came out on Tuesday and features a main character who has 2 jobs. One of them by day is at a Christian bakery where she is not out to her co-workers, and by night she works as a bartender at a lesbian bar. Firstly, I'd like to say that the naming of things in this book is so great. For example, the lesbian bar is called Ruby Red and it's very much Wizard of Oz themed, and then the bakery is called Daily Bread because it's owned by a pastor's wife. As you can imagine, our main character is a very, very busy woman. She has these 2 jobs, she has this extended family where she ends up having to go to all of their weddings and stuff like that, but she's always relegated to kind of the furthest away table at the wedding because they're all like, well, you're family, so we have to invite you, but we're queer, so we don't really want to invite you. This isn't to say that she doesn't have any family who actually accepts her. She does have her mother, who is fantastic, and then the 2 men that she calls her uncles, which are her mother's best friends, who are also queer and fantastic. But she's at one such family wedding where she meets a couple of other people that aren't really feeling the vibe of it either, and she ends up confiding in them that she actually just fixed a disaster kind of backstage of this wedding, in that they ordered a groom's cake and they wanted it to be a peacock cake, but the bakery didn't hear the whole word peacock. I'll let you figure out which part they heard. So she ended up having to make that cake into something you could actually serve at a Baptist church wedding. And after hearing all about this, the woman's like, I'm actually getting married in a couple of weeks and one of my bridesmaids just dropped out, and I was wondering if you could fill in the ceremony and just like, if there's any problems, solve them. And she's like, this is a little bit weird, but also, sure, why not? From there, she ends up making an entire business out of this professional bridesmaids model. In this book, she's also surrounded with friends, and that was fun to see, although there is some conflict that does come down the line. And then she also meets somebody during a closing shift at Daily Bread who she really would like to date and actually ends up asking her out, and that is a whole interesting saga. Overall, this was sweet and lovely. There's also at least one recipe at the back of this book as well. If you like foodie books or queer romances, this is something that you should pick up. On to what I watched this week. We finished the second half of the 4th season of Ozark, so now we're done. It's finished. It's over. And obviously, being the last 4 episodes we're ever going to get in a show, there's not much I can tell you. This did end in an overall satisfying way, although there are some things that I could have done without, but that's nothing I can actually tell you without spoilers. This show is the personification of a snowball rolling downhill and collecting more and more snow, and it just getting heavier and a bigger problem and higher stakes. I also watched a crap ton of episodes of Black Books. If you've never seen this before, this is actually a show that I watched when I lived in the UK. I actually watched all 3 seasons in the same day, pretty much without getting off my friend's couch. Our main character is played by the Irish Dylan Marron, and he is the owner of a bookstore. He also lives above the bookstore, and his kitchen is actually at the back of the bookstore. And I'm just like, how could I get me one of these? He's cranky and ridiculous, and we actually have no idea how he keeps the shop open. Then at the beginning of the series, he's got a friend who has the shop next door, so she comes over all the time, they chat a lot, and then also his friend Manny, who's played by Bill Bailey, also works at the shop and is basically a very good-natured errand boy. This was something I mostly just dropped in on because it's something that Chad was just watching one day and I was like, ah, good, I haven't seen this in a while. And it's always a good, fun, ridiculous time. We also watched the entire 1st season of Travel Man. That sounds super impressive until you realize there's only 4 episodes in the 1st season. This is a series where Richard Ayoade goes on a 48-hour vacation somewhere close to him by flying with a random celebrity, and they just kind of look around whatever that town is for the 48 hours. It's snarky and amusing and really, really makes me want to travel. Last night we also managed to watch the first 3 episodes of Our Flag Means Death, and this is just as cute as I thought it was going to be. It's so weird to have a wholesome pirate show, and yet that's what this is. Something I actually kind of enjoy about this show is it doesn't try to get like the right vernacular for the time. It just uses this very modern way of speaking, even though this is 1717 on the high seas. And like I said, there's just something really wholesome about it, and I'm digging it so far. We also went back to our collective childhoods and watched the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Listen, this foursome was my imaginary friends when I was little. I'd play out scenarios of hanging out with them while I was trying to fall asleep as a kid, and that's largely to do with the cartoon, but also these movies. I actually hadn't seen this movie for quite a while, and it was weird to go back to and just look at it and be like, wow, I still remember a bunch of this. In this movie, we get a bit of the origin story. We meet April O'Neil, we also meet Casey Jones, and they go against the Shredder. My roommate also pointed out to me that there's a romantic comedy that stars Kumail Nanjiani, and we watched that immediately, that is called The Lovebirds. At the beginning of this movie, everything is just lovely and like they've just met and it's so beautiful, and we were actually just sitting here being like, when's the shoe gonna drop? Like there's going to be a cut to something, because that just seems like the type of comedy he would act in. And sure enough, a few seconds later, it was like 4 years later and they're in the middle of a fight about whether or not they could win the Amazing Race. They're on their way to a party, and as they continue this fight, they kind of realize that they should break up. However, that's when a biker goes right in front of their car and then gets hit. That starts a whole situation where they are running throughout town trying to prove that they didn't kill this biker. As two people of color, they felt that they could not go to the police without proof that they were not the murderers, because somebody else ended up actually killing that biker. This turned into a very fun action comedy. It was full of quips. It was very, very funny. I highly suggest watching it. Chad particularly and I also enjoy time travel movies, or at least enjoy yelling at them, so we ended up watching this one that is basically a time loop called Boss Level. One day, out of nowhere, our main character wakes up and immediately there's some guy trying to kill him, and he ends up getting him because, you know, you're groggy when you first wake up and you're pretty vulnerable. However, as soon as he died, he reboots and the day starts over again. As we meet him, I believe he's on day 192 of this repeat, which means he actually has a few things down. Like, he gets by that first guy just no problem, there's a helicopter after that, he figures that out no problem, there's an explosion, he's figured out how to get past that, there's all these other baddies trying to find him, and he hasn't really been able to live past a certain time frame in the day, but you know, he's doing okay. He's also trying to figure out why he's reliving this day over and over again and why he keeps getting murdered. It was a fun premise. It wasn't a great movie, but it was good enough for the hour and a half or so that we spent with it. Another action movie my roommate and I watched this week is Atomic Blonde. I knew nothing about this going into it. I just knew who the main character was played by, and my roommate sold it as kind of a female John Wick situation. Essentially, Charlize Theron works for MI6 and she is debriefing after this mission where she had to go into occupied Berlin. This was just before the wall was coming down in 1989. And there's essentially a list of sorts that she needs to get, and she's working with people on the ground in Berlin, and then it just becomes a whole big who is playing what side situation. This had a wonderful cast, great choreography, great cinematography. I very much enjoyed it. The one audiobook I managed to finish this week was Gilded by Marissa Mayer. I did not know going into this book that it was the first in a series, because I guess I hadn't actually added it to my Goodreads, so I didn't see that line where it's like one in the Gilded series. So when I finished it, I was like, wait, what? No, where's the end of it? So just know going in that this is the first in a series. This book starts out in a small village where our main character lives with her father. Her mother left them many, many years ago, and she actually works at the schoolhouse where she got her education. However, many townsfolk think that she's bad luck because she has these very distinct eyes, and people have decided that if anything goes wrong in town, it's because somebody associated with her, so she lives kind of a lonely experience. She also has a little bit of a reputation for being a big liar because she loves telling stories. That is ultimately something that gets her in a little bit of trouble. You see, every time there's a full moon, there's something called the Hunt, where this Earl King comes out with his dead entourage and goes hunting around the kingdom. And one full moon, she hears these people trying to get into her cellar to get away from him, and she actually helps them. Then the Earl King himself confronts her, and she has to make up a whole story about why she's out right now at midnight, and she tells such a good tale that he buys it and leaves. However, he can't really get over the tale that she tells because she said something about being able to spin straw into gold, which means that the next time he's out, he wants her to prove it. If this is starting to sound like a very particular fairy tale, that's because this is, in fact, a reimagining of Rumpelstiltskin. However, the author has taken the original tale and really turned it, and it's very interesting, and I'm very mad that it wasn't a standalone because I thought it was a standalone, and now I have to wait to figure out what else happens. I don't know if this is going to be a duology or a longer series, but I really thought I was going to get all the answers and then I didn't, and I was a little bit bummed, but I'm also excited to eventually read more. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!